supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go.
Wow,
Hello
you're a
and
great
welcome to
dancer.
the show, everyone. We're the She Squatchers, and we're coming for another show tonight. We're excited to be here, and I'm Jen, the host of the show, and I've got the team here. Everybody introduce yourselves, girls.
Oh, I am Jenna.
I am Tammy.
Yay! We've got a
I'm
fun
trying-
show for you guys tonight. We've got David Eller joining us, and we are so excited. So welcome to the show, David, and I know you've got lots to tell us, so we're going to get right to it. Can you just give a brief background for our listeners to know who you are or how this relates to you?
Yeah, I was introduced to the whole concept of Bigfoot when I was 8 or 9. I read an article in Reader's Digest, and it was about the Patterson-Gimlin film, and it fascinated me, scared the crap out of me, and absolutely fascinated me. And from that point on, it's been a fever. I've collected everything I could find, every article, every newspaper story, magazine. It wasn't long before I discovered Ivan Sanderson. And once I discovered Ivan Sanderson, that was it. It's like, I'm going to be Ivan Sanderson. And that's kind of where I am now. I'm known as an Indiana Jones of cryptid hunting. I've been to the Yucatan to explore the pyramids. That was my first paranormal experience. I'll tell you about that if you want to hear. But I've hunted monsters for over 30 years, and I have seen things, I have heard things, I have experienced things that most people go, you are a liar. And it's like, it's all true. Everything is true. And there are things out there that can rip your head off and jam it down your bloody gullet. And I have seen it and I've experienced it. And a few years ago, 3 years ago, actually, 2021, I discovered a site here in Tennessee that is now called a holy grail of Bigfoot sites because of all the structures, the interactions, the things that have happened to me. And I wrote a book about it. It's called The Pagoda. Just came out about a month ago. So check it out. But it tells the story. It's a year-long journal, diary kind of thing as it's happening. I write that night. When something happens, I will write it down that night. And so it's very fresh. It's unique. I have pictures of the structures that I found that are not like most structures. These are, I call them pagodas, because they will take a tree, bend it over, take another tree, bend it over, and begin to braid these things together. Actually braiding. They're not twisted. They don't grow this way. They are braided. I actually took a guy to show him, and he said, and I didn't mention the word braid. He said, these are braided, David. And I said, yeah, I know. So after they get two together, they bring two more over. Then they bring two more over. Then they bring two more over until they have like an igloo thing happening.
That sounds very familiar, David, because we found a structure in northern Minnesota where they were stacking the trees on top of each other and weaving the little branches together.
There you go. Yes. I mean, it seems like they've got this thing that they do. They're trying to interpret their surroundings by using their surroundings. Each of these pagodas that I have found have been what I call signed. Every one of them have what I call an axe. It's a thick, flat stone set between two saplings, and then it's braided and twisted at the top. So it looks like an axe sitting on its head. Now, is that a way that they sign their art? Is this art? Is this a primitive Aboriginal form of art? Is this a sign to other tribes saying this is us? But I have found 3 of these structures in this 150-acre area, 8 or 9 foot tall at the top. The first 2 were 20 feet across. The third one, which I call the longhouse, was 20 by 30. And it's like they didn't want to stop. They just kept braiding and braiding and braiding. So it's an amazing adventure. So check out the book if you get a chance.
I
Where
will
can
have
people
to read.
find the book?
I'm sorry?
Where can they find the book?
You can get it on Amazon. You can order it directly from the publisher, which is Premium Press America. Or if you get a hold of me, you can get it from me. So, but yeah, the best thing to do is look up Premium Press America, and you can order it directly from them.
Well, I can't wait. I
Yeah.
want an order right now, please.
Cool. All right. I'll get it.
So Raptor's asking if you share your pictures and video anywhere.
At my lectures. Yeah, I've got a huge, big conference coming up in Paducah, Kentucky. It's the Atomic City Paranormal Symposium. We've got 7 great speakers. I'm one of them, and I always show pictures, video. Mark Pleasant, an award-winning film documentarian, did a short 7-minute video of me at the site. It's beautifully done, but it tells a short 7-minute synopsis of what's going on there, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, I still go and have adventures there, and I love to talk to people. I'll be setting up, we'll all have booths, and I want to talk to everybody. I want to show people this stuff because it's out there, and once you know what to look for, you will be able to see these things. Most people, it's just like any kind of hunting, deer, elk, bear, raccoon, whatever. Once you know your quarry and what they do, now you can look for the sign. Most people don't know what they're looking for, but once you begin to see the weird tree structures, like what I call seesaws, where they will take a deadfall tree, put it between the crotch of another tree, and plant it in there so hard it's completely straight, but it will teeter-totter. And it's stuff that can't happen naturally. But getting back to the braids, they braid branches, they braid grasses, they braid flags. Harriet McFeely has her museum. Well, I've actually found one of those flags at the cemetery where my wife is buried. Now, how weird is that?
Wow.
So that's going to be the second book, The Pagoda Legacy, because I would stay at that cemetery overnight, and I began to have these things happening. One night, for 3 hours, this thing screamed in the field next to the cemetery. 3 hours of screaming. There were no dogs barking during this. Now, there are dogs that all around this cemetery that bark all night long. Raccoons, possums, whatever, they'll bark. As soon as this thing started screaming, the dogs did not want to get involved with it, and they didn't do anything until later the coyotes began to yelp and howl. Once they heard those, then the dogs said, oh, I can take a coyote, but they didn't want any part of this other thing that was screaming. So, yeah, crazy stuff.
Wow. So how is it screaming? Just the normal?
Well, the first time I ever heard one scream, it's in the book, but it sounded like a woman being murdered. And if I'm walking at 12 o'clock, this thing screamed at me from 7 o'clock. Okay. So I had already passed it. It didn't have to let me know it was there. It wanted me to know it was there, and it wanted to tell another one that I was coming. So in my mind, which I think I was influenced a little bit by the subsonic frequencies, in my mind, I'm seeing a woman coming at me through the woods with a knife. So I braced like this to check the blade, because it was real. I mean, I was seeing a woman coming at me, and I did this, and I saw this creature running parallel to my path. It hit a tree line, made a 90-degree, and began to pop trees as it ran. Bow, 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 bow. And I thought, after I calmed down, I thought, that is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I am going to meet up with that thing because I know these trails. I knew that if I went down and around with the trajectory it was going, I knew that I could run into it. So I did. I got down over there, and I began to hear the popping and the snapping. It wasn't long before Big Daddy started screaming again, and this deer jumped out in front of me, not 10 feet away, with eyes like Bambi, going, what do I do? So here I am. I got a deer in front of me, and I'm afraid it's going to rear up and start pawing. They will cut you to ribbons. And Big Daddy is screaming in the back. All of a sudden, I hear another one to my right, just right there, and I'm looking to see what's going on. There's nothing there. I've got Big Daddy screaming, a deer in front of me, and an invisible monster to my right. That's when my mind completely changed. Up until that point, I was researching these things as though they were North American apes. And I still had all the questions. Why can't we get good pictures? Why can't we get good video? Why don't we have one in a zoo? This happened, and I realized we're now in the world that the Native Americans have always talked about. These are spirit beings that pass back and forth through reality. That explains everything, why you can't get good video, why you can't get good pictures, why they leave 3 tracks, nothing before it, nothing after. I've found a single track in the same soil there, but it should leave tracks this way, but there's nothing there but one track. They seem to be able to phase in. They have weight. They leave footprints. They eat. They poop. They bleed, and then they disappear. That's spiritual. We're dealing with a spiritual thing, and I don't want to be here. I don't want to speak in sci-fi language. That's the side B. You have side A and side B, and this line of demarcation. Everybody on side A thinks side B is crazy. But once you get over here, you see how wrong you were. And that's a major shift in the Bigfoot world right now. But to get back to your question, what did it sound like? This creature screamed for 3 hours, and it would do 5 or 6 screams, and then it would shut up for a while, and then it would start again, 5 or 6 screams. But it sounded like it was saying wow, and it would start really low, and it would go wow, and it would go as high, and you thought there was no way it could get any higher, and it did, and it would sustain, just keep going, and then it would just drop suddenly. Wait a few seconds, start it again, wow, and it was the craziest thing. And I just laid there for 3 hours in the cemetery listening to this, and it was so bad. The neighbor that lives about a mile down the valley from the cemetery drove his truck, just hell into this truck, pulled up, and he said, "What are you doing in my backyard screaming?" And I said, because this guy was ready to strangle me. He said, "I got 2 women down there now that are scared for their lives. What are you doing?" And I said, "Look, that wasn't me. That's what I'm down here investigating." "Why would I do that? We're in Tennessee. Everybody's got guns. I got guns. You're not going to go in somebody's backyard and start screaming. How stupid is that?" But he was determined this was me. So there I had validation right there of what I had just experienced the night before. I've got 5 properties right around this cemetery now that have called me in to research their properties because they're all having bizarre situations. One guy that's 2 miles away called me and he said, "I'm not going to tell you what I got. I just want you to look at this and you tell me." So I'm looking, and I begin to see the structures. Not natural at all. Weird little twisty structure. And I said, "Well, this. And he said, "See, that's what I'm seeing." So I went through his entire woods. He's got his house. There's a pond right here and then woods. Everywhere there was a structure, it was in sight of his house on the other side of the pond. There was nothing anywhere that you couldn't see the house. So my theory, we all have theories. My theory is that they stand there and watch the house and nervously do this stuff. And that's all they do. They're there to watch. Now, why they're watching, I don't know. But that's kind of what it seemed like. And in a few weeks, he called me and said, "It's all gone." And I said, "What do you mean it's all gone?" He said, "None of it. It's gone." And I know that they will take down their structures and start over. And sure enough, they've started building new ones. Then they're all inside of the house. So, and he's got 2 women that live there. My my thinking has always been these creatures gravitate toward women. And I think that's part of their origins that we might get into later if you want to talk about it. But yeah, screams, the knocks. There's a barn right next to the cemetery. One night I was laying out at the cemetery and I kept hearing knock, knock, knock. Now there's nobody around except me. Knock, knock, knock. On the barn, knock, knock, knock. So it's like, okay, man, well, we're here. So, and they knew, and I say they, I don't think these things travel singularly very much. I think there almost always are two. That's why they signal back and forth. They're signaling each other. They're surrounding you. And so back to my screaming story where you got Big Daddy, the deer, and the screamer. So at one point, this deer bolts to my left over my shoulder, pretty much just pow. And so now I'm left here with Big Daddy and the invisible screamer. Sounds like a band. Okay.
Right.
And they just screamed until I just gave up. And I don't run. I don't frighten. I don't have that in me. As a Christian, I'm like, I ain't got nothing to be afraid of. Okay. Finally, they just shut up, and I kept going down that trail, and I heard crashing. They will do that aggressive crashing sound that it's like they're thinking, I'm going to scare that guy out of here, but I don't scare. I mean, I'm hearing it, and there are times I took my nephew in one time, and immediately these things started crashing, and it sounds like the whole woods are just coming down around you, but you're not seeing any evidence of it. It's not just a coincidental branch falling. It's like, and what they will do, they work in tandem. They will make sound over here, and then you look that way, and then they'll make sound over there. So now you've turned this one this way. That one runs away, making noise. You look back, that one runs away. So it's like they work you, they play you, they punk you. You know, there was one instance where I had my equipment. I was doing call blasting. And I was coming from this one area. They're called glades. There's a lot of glades in this area. The glades are they're considered desert areas. Even if they're in a forest, they're deserts because of the plants that are there, the plants that aren't there. So I left the glade and I'm walking to the first pagoda. And it's quite a ways. I get to the pagoda and I start hearing rock on rock. Clack, 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 nonstop. And I'm going, what the heck? And I trudged back the circuitous route to the glade, and I almost get there, and it stops. And I thought, well, that was weird. So then I trudged back the circuitous route back to the pagoda. Just about the time I get there, clack, 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 clack. And I thought that's more than coincidence. So I'm heading back circuitous route to the glade, and I almost get there, and it stops. Okay, so this is getting weird, and I go back to the pagoda. 4 times they did that to me before I realized I'm being punked. They're messing with me. This is humor. These creatures have a humor, and this is their humor. They want to see how many times the guy in the hat will come back and check. And I've had so many crazy experiences here. I saw the adult. A little while later, I saw a young one. The young ones, as you probably know, reddish in tone, generally. Well, they're described that way. The one I saw was reddish. It was so red that at first I thought it was a fox, way bigger than a fox. And it was on all 4s, doing the spider crawl out, okay? But my thing has always been that these pagodas could very well be cribs, for lack of a better word, cribs. This is where the young ones are put as mom and dad go foraging. And the reason I think that is because gorillas do it. Okay, so that's orangutans do it. But on the floor of the first pagoda are all these stacked sticks, all lined up perfectly. And that leads into the Bigfoot brain, autistic brain. Autistic brain has that orderly thing. If you've ever gone into an autistic person's room, everything is immaculate. Everything is lined up by size. If there's cups, everything is by size. pencils on the table are all like, that's exactly what was going on in the floor of this first pagoda. So could this be where the kids play with their sticks while mom and dad go foraging? And if I think that, which I do, it would not be out of the way to think I'm going to see a young one there at some point, which I did. This was right behind the first pagoda. And yeah, the book is full of this stuff. Man, you may think I'm full of it, but I mean, this is all true. This is what I've experienced there.
So when are we all getting together and going back to this area?
Whenever you want. I don't tell a lot of people about it. It's open to everyone. There's actually a trail system that runs through it. It's owned by the state, but they don't advertise it. This is called a primitive area, and it is very primitive. I've even found on the outskirts of this area a pit where someone or something has been dumping clothes. Now, feral people, I don't know, but this is just a wild area, rocky and strange. And for a long time when I went in, there were no animal sounds, no birds, no squirrels, nothing. There were woodpeckers, or what I thought were woodpeckers. Every time I would go in, there would be da 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 da. And I'm thinking, that's weird, that I always hear a woodpecker. So one day, I'm walking along, and I have my mallet to do wood knocks, and I just happened to see a tree, two trees like that, and I took my mallet and just went, and I realized that's the sound I'm hearing. That wasn't woodpeckers, that was something like that. So I began to do it, and I got an answer back. Now woodpeckers don't communicate with pecks. That's a feeding thing. They're pecking to get larvae and stuff. So there's my first clue that something was going on. So I did it again. I got something back. So then I thought, well, let me try something else. And while I'm there, sometimes I do like a fake Morse code. Just did it. I did that, and I got another one answer. So we've got two. I'm talking to two at the same time. One with woodpecker sounds, one with Morse code. And so then I just started like a rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. Now a third one starts. I'm talking to three at the same time with different rhythms. This continued for 10 minutes until some hikers came through. Once these things shut down, you can't get them to start up again. So that's one thing I have learned. If they're communicating with you, they will do it until they're interrupted, and then they're done. So yeah, amazing.
Did you tell us what your theory was on the X's? I know you talked about structures, but I'd love to hear your theory.
Not the X's. I know a lot of people say that means stay out. Maybe. I think. Okay, let me back up. People call me an expert. They always have me on. Well, David Eller's an expert. They ain't no experts. Okay, I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been doing it. We still don't know enough about these creatures for anyone to be considered an expert. So if you run into anyone that says there's an expert, that they are an expert on Bigfoot, you might as well turn around and walk the other way, because there ain't no such thing. So there are these people who say that's X's. As many structures as I have found here, I think it's just a way to mark territory. I don't think it's a keep out thing, but I think it's a way of saying, yes, I'm here. This is patrolled by me. And I do believe that there are variants of those things to tell others that this is my tribe. You're welcome. Like I say, there's no experts, and I'm the first one to tell you I don't know. The more you learn, the less you know. I learned that a long time ago. After 30 years of hunting monsters, the more you learn, the less you know. I know less now after 30 years than I did when I started, because I've learned so much. And you keep learning stuff, and it doesn't jibe with what you just thought you knew. But I'm very much on side B now. I will never go back to side A. I don't believe these are, quote, natural creatures that subject to every physical law such as we. They just don't present themselves in that way. And and in my world, my opinion, if you're on side A and you still want to stay on side A, and you say, I've had people say, well, I've been researching for 25 years and I've never experienced any of that. Well, then you're not doing it right. You're really not out there doing it, okay? Because it doesn't take long before you start having the orbs. The orbs. See, I still haven't told you about Alabama. Oh, baby. Alabama completely changed my life. So, I can shut up. I'll shut up whenever you want me to.
You're
Well,
being
we-
fabulous.
We do
Okay.
have questions that are waiting for you, but we do want to hear about Alabama first.
Okay. This adventure, because that's what it was, involved 4 women and myself. I love researching with women because I think they gravitate toward women for a number of reasons. Native Americans always say that. Watch your women. Don't let your women go in the woods, okay? Out of Canada, we have stories of women being taken. 1 or 2 come back pregnant. I'm just saying.
We're all fixed and unable. They don't want us.
Whatever,
I'm still capable.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So I have a friend, Anita. I won't mention last names because, they may not want their names mentioned, but Anita. And we had gone out to this one section of Alabama and had some callbacks, had some pretty good callbacks, wood knocks, grunts, whatever. It was very promising. So she said, well, in a couple weeks, let's do a camp out. There's some women I want you to meet, and I think we could do some good stuff here. So, okay, we planned it. The weekend came, and I met. Okay, my friend is Anita. She has a friend, Lanita, and there's also a lady named Janice, which you may know, and then there's Tara. So 4 women and myself. Now, what I didn't know was that none of these women really knew each other well. I thought they all were just big pals, but they weren't. One knew this one, the other one knew this one, but they had never done anything together. So in actuality, this was a grand experiment in group dynamics. And it was very interesting to see how they all worked together with myself when things began to happen. So we all get there, they start setting up camp, making the fire. This was toward the end of the year. It was getting cold and we knew we were going to have a fire. So I said, well, I'm going to start scoping. That's what I do. I get out in the woods and I began to scope the area. I want to see what's there. I want to see if there's any structures. Well, you know what I found? I found a pagoda or something like a pagoda. Now, whether it's completely Sasquatch or whether it started out man-made and they began to add to it, there is definite Sasquatch influence on this thing. And it was good size. And I said, I'm sleeping right there. My first mistake. So I set up my stuff. I'm kind of a glamper. I have my nice little bed. I have my blow-up mattress, and it's cool, So I came back, and the girls were getting their tents set up and everything. So we're sitting around the campfire, and now 3 of these women are empaths, and they're always feeling the vibes, and they're saying they're coming from that direction. And they're hearing them. Now, that's 2 of the women. That's 3 of the women. Janice was over in this area, and I was still over by the pagoda, or my bed, put it that way. And they're hearing or feeling something right there coming toward the back of my bed, where I was going to sleep. And they said, yeah, something's going to happen. We're not sure. So as night began to get very evident, things were getting darker. I love lights. I love to set lights out in the woods. They draw things. They make things curious. So I had one strobe light kind of a thing, and then one that just kind of moved and strobed, but very, very slow strobe. I set these in front of where I was sleeping. So we're sitting there, and by this time Janice had come in. It's the five of us sitting around the campfire. I look up, and the lights are moving in tandem, not like different, but it's like you had a stick between them, like a barbell. It's like you were lifting a barbell. They moved together, okay? And I'm looking at it like, wait a minute. Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? And they all look over there, and I said, what are you seeing? And two of the ladies said, well, the lights are moving. And I said, right. But now Janice was sitting right next to me. She couldn't see it. She gets out her night vision goggles, and she said, I still can't see it. So three of us are seeing these lights absolutely moving. She can't, even with night vision. So it's like, are we being influenced, or is she being influenced? Because something's going on, but we're all not seeing it. So I said, well, we need to get down there. Janice just happened to have her EMF meter with her. And I said, well, I've got two in the car. Let's go down. So we get down there. We set these EMF meters up, and we're already getting weirdness going on. And Janice and I are looking at each other like, I've never experienced this, not in a Bigfoot situation. So I said, well, let's ask questions. So we began to ask questions, and they were all like yes or very definite yes or no questions. And it would be like, if so-and-so and so-and-so if the answer is yes, make the lights shine. If the answer is, and we sat for a little while, if the answer is no, make the lights red. And so these things would answer our questions yes or no. And it got very involved. And now it just happens that I have a friend that I can mentally get into. I have been into her twice, and when I come out, bizarre things happen. Like one time my muscles cramped up, and one time I felt like I was freezing, but she's something else. And I called her and I said, look, this is what we've got going. We're talking to these creatures. See if you can tune into them. And she immediately went silent. And I thought she had hung up, but she wasn't saying anything. So we're asking these questions. And during these questions, we found out that they didn't want me to sleep there. They didn't want me to walk behind the structure, that they were coming for the women, and they were coming from that direction, which is what the first two women were saying. Finally, after our conversation, I get back on the phone and I say, are you still there? And she said, yeah, I've been out this whole time. I immediately tuned into those things. There were two with you. One hadn't manifested itself. Well, what I didn't know at the time, there was one messing with the two ladies at the campfire, making sounds, doing all sorts of things. So that was the third one that was over here manifesting. So by that time, we had, okay, back to the lady on the phone. She said while she was in this trance or whatever was going on, her eyes began to go rapid eye movement. That's the dream state. Okay. That's not a normal situation. She did something like that. First time I went into her eyes crossed. And she said, that has never happened to me. So there's something about her eyes. When she gets into a paranormal situation, she reacts with her eyes. But she said she couldn't control the way her eyes were moving back and forth. And I had to explain that's the dream state. That's the dreamland, you know. And she said I couldn't do anything but just experience these creatures. And she said that they told her that they were there for the women. And so by that time I said, okay, well, we just need to stop. I mean, we've had our experiences. Let's just call in the night, start again fresh tomorrow. So we did our day the next day. As night began to fall, we started having nuts fired at us through the woods, straight line, pow, not like up and over or falling from trees. These things were like fired from a gun, pow, straight horizontal. And then they would fall and roll and roll and roll. So there was a lot of force behind these tosses. Okay.
Like you're talking about acorns and stuff?
It's not an acorn, but it's a tree nut. Yeah. They still had the green wrapping on them. Okay. So, pow, these things were coming in. And I said, well, I think we're going to have some action tonight. So Tara had to leave. She was in another campground. So here was Anita, Lanita, and Janice. Janice is a really interesting person. At one point, she brought out dowsing rods and was semi-talking with these creatures. Okay, so that's a whole other situation. But what's weird is that we all had our various adventures and we validated each other's experiences. So at one point, we were sitting at the fire and I began to hear Anita go, oh, oh. And I look over and she's standing. Now, keep in mind, she has a bad hip and it's hard for her to get around. Well, she's trying to stand up and she's holding her hand out and she's going, and I said, Anita, what's going on? She goes, there's a hurt one. One of them is hurt. It wants me to come to it. Now, she's a nurse. So I'm saying, well, if what you're saying is true, maybe they've tapped into that information that you're a nurse. Okay, they're trying to play on that. You're not going anywhere. And she said, but I've got to. And now she's starting to get up. And Lanita said, Anita, listen to David. He knows what he's talking about. And she said, just sit down. And so Anita is still trying to get up. And I walk over and I help her sit back down. I said, you're not going anywhere. If that thing has tapped into you, then it knows you can't go. Let it come to you. And she goes, okay. And she would sit there and moan and just say, oh, it's hurt. It's hurt so bad. And I said, well, I think that's just what it's telling you. Okay, that's just what it wants you to believe. Again, if it's tapped into you, it can come to you. And this was for a while. This was going on. Lanita was kind of freaking out, and I thought I felt that we were again at the end of the night. We've already had all these experiences, and I said, let's get you into your car. Anita was sleeping in the car. Lanita was sleeping in the tent. I was sleeping in my car, which was a good distance away. So we get Anita in her car. Lanita goes over to her tent and she's doing her thing. I take the night vision goggles and I've decided I'm going to watch what goes on all night long. So I'm sitting there. Now, remember, I can't hear anything that's going on because I'm in my car. My heater's running because it's gotten really cold. But I'm just sitting there watching the show. Nothing happens with Anita. But I'm seeing Lanita in her tent every little bit. She'll flip on her light and I can see her silhouette, kind of going a little spastic crazy. Lights goes out. Lights come back on. Spastic, a little bit strange. Lights go out. At one point, I see her get up, come out of the tent, and is looking around and talking, and she's looking around. And I'm thinking, what is her deal? What is happening? Goes back in. At one point, I see a huge human-shaped shadow go across the tent. So I'm seeing a shadow person in large, go across the surface of the tent. Now, this was not a silhouette from inside. This was a shadow being cast on the outside. Now, there's nothing there to cast a shadow. Nothing. All the time this is going on, I'm hearing these sounds on my van. I get out 3 times to check if it's a branch, twigs, leaves, whatever. There's nothing. Nothing is touching my van. Okay, there's nothing there. I get around and walk around 3 times during the night. Still. During this also, I'm seeing blue flashes on my dashboard. Like something behind me is flashing. Now, we're the only ones at the campground at this time. It has gotten so cold that everybody else is gone. We're the only ones. Flash. And I'm thinking, what is that? Is it a guy with a flashlight? But it's blue. It's just a beautiful shade of blue. I can only think that something was manifesting behind the van. an orb, some orb thing was going on. And while this was happening, it was physical manifestation. Okay. Again, I'm talking sci-fi. It's side B now. I'm on side B. But I'm seeing Lanita just going crazy over here. And then at one point she gets out. She's like just really upset. And she walks to the little toilet facility that they had created, walks back, goes in, gets her stuff, and goes to Anita's van. And I've not heard anything that's going on because, again, I'm in my van. And that was it. Once she gets in the van, there's no more action except those lights by where I was going to sleep continually are moving. They're moving around. And that same barbell connected look, not independently, perfectly together. Okay. That happens. That's all night long. These things are doing that. So I get up the next morning. The ladies have already started cooking. And I get up, I get to the fire, and Anita said, David, I'm sorry about last night. I don't remember any of it. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I don't remember what Lanita said that I did. And I said, you don't remember going, I'm going up. She said, no, I don't remember any of that. I didn't know I had done that until after Lanita got into the car with me. She's saying, this is what's going on. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, that was the last part of last year. Her memory still is not complete on what happened. So we're talking and I'm saying, well, Lanita, what were you doing last night? And she said, you saw that? And I said, yeah. Did you hear me scream? And I said, no, I was in the car. She said, these things were all around the tent, rubbing up against the tent, pulling the flap down, looking at me. And I said, well, that's kind of what I saw. This shadow went across the surface of your tent. She said, that's what they were doing. They were rubbing up against the tent all night long. And at one point, I just said, why are you bothering me? In the name of Jesus Christ, go away. And they just kept. She said, I look up and one of them has taken its finger and is looking in at me. That's when I got up and I went to see what was going on. I said, I saw that. She said, yeah, I was going to confront these things. I didn't know why they were doing this to me. But once I got out there was nothing there. So I get back in, pretty soon it starts again. And so I go out and I go to the toilet and I said, well, I saw that. And she said, the whole time I'm screaming, I'm saying, why are you doing this to me? And she said, it was very real. I was seeing all of this stuff. And I said, well, I saw your reactions. All I saw was the shadow. And Anita was completely out of it. She never heard any of it. When she got to her car, she was so dead tired. She said she completely passed out. So whatever that was that they were pulling her into the woods, it just took it out of her. So we talked some more and we helped validate each other's stories. And like I say, she still has memory problems from that. She does feel now that there was a reason they wanted her to go out there, but she doesn't know what it was. And I continue to say, they wanted you for something. They knew you were a nurse. They knew that you could provide something. Well, now Tara later, this was just a few months ago, Tara, as an empath, said, because she was gone, she didn't know any of this that was going on. Well, she plugged into them, and this one told her that it had gotten into a fight with another one and it hurt its back. So again, side B, I'm just telling you what, it's all just, it's opened my mind to a whole lot of stuff that I had never experienced before. Alabama, if you want to have adventure, go to Alabama, honestly. All right, I'm done. That's my Alabama story.
Well, Lanita's in the chat room asking you to tell about the, I think she says SOS message. Am I reading that right?
I am not, I don't know. This is my Anita? Is this my Anita?
Lanita.
Oh, Lanita. Okay, Lanita, I don't know that story. There were so many things that happened that night. We still don't see. Oh, I was talking to Janice not long ago, and she had adventures, and she said she didn't want to tell them because she didn't want to think that she was trying to glom on to you other guys. So she had stuff too. So I don't know that story. So you need to have Lanita on sometime. Because there's a lot went on that night that we still don't know exactly everything that happened, but it was a major, stupid, crazy adventure, honestly.
All right.
I'm going to be writing about that in my next book, by the way, Sean. Anyway.
Lanita, get a hold of me. She's squatchers@yahoo.com.
Yeah. Now, Lanita is unique. I won't tell her entire story, but she's connected to some of these things. She's got a big, long story to tell you. And it's been years and years. It's not just recent. She's had contact with these things for a long time. So yeah, she's pretty interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't get to really communicate with her a whole lot, but for what I did, she seems to be a very sane, informative person. Yeah.
Oh, she says my dead phone sent an SOS message to my husband. He got a message that I was in trouble.
She kept having problems with her phone, and it just kept sending messages. Her husband was trying to get a hold of her, but it wasn't working, but it would send SOS messages. Her phone didn't work except to get SOS messages. It was the weirdest. Yeah, It was weird. Very weird, but yeah.
And that was while you were out there. And quick question, because I don't want to interrupt too much, but when you go out there and have all these experiences, are you documenting them on any kind of recorders or recording?
I'm not. We should, but I have some theories about that too. I don't, voice recorders, things like that. We probably do need to use. That takes me into other theories that I have. Is why is it that of the three major paranormal fields, you've got ufology, you've got hauntings, and you've got cryptids. We're hunting these things with the same equipment, and we're having success with the same equipment. That should tell you right there that this is all related. It's all magnetic. It's all electric. It's all coming from the same source, which personally I think is dark. But that's just me. We all have room for our thoughts. A lot of people just hate me for saying that. Other people say, tell it, Dave. But yeah, but I think the older technology works better. Film, I think, works better than the new technology.
So speaking of film, Raptor had asked earlier about, you were talking about how they're spiritual and they come in and out of the world.
Yeah.
And the question was, why didn't Patty do that when they were filming her walking?
I don't know. Yeah, that's what I say. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. But was Patty there? Was Patty visible before they got there? And if she did, and I'm not saying that they do it at a regular interval. They do it when they want to do it. So why Patty didn't do it, I don't know. I have no idea. But that was when she was in her physical form, and they have their own ideas of when they want you to see them. It's just like the one that screamed at me. It didn't have to let me know it was there. Patty didn't have to let Roger Patterson know it was there. There are a lot of questions, for sure. There are a lot of questions. I mean, some people think that are we dealing with the same creature all over the US and the world? Or are we dealing with variants? Or are we dealing with three totally separate things? And I say three because we have 3-toed prints, 4-toed prints, and 5-toed prints. How? Why? Are the swamp critters tend to have 3 toes? The ones seen around the rivers in the south, they seem to be 3-toed. Others are 4-toed. The most common is the 5-toed. I found 5-toed prints. Most of the fellow researchers that I know have found 5-toed prints, but you go to Florida, they're finding 3-toed prints. Now, is that an adaptation to swamp living? I don't know. Again, I'm not afraid to say I don't know. Nobody knows, but I'm just the one who's not afraid to say it,
Mm-hmm.
But now I have a friend, okay, who's big into footprints. Just let your mind wander, and you probably know what I'm talking about. He said there are no three-toed primates. Well, who's to say we're dealing with primates? Okay, that's an earthly beast. That's a earthbound creature. I don't even like that word anyway. That implies certain things, but that's a whole other story. But no one says that these creatures that are leaving the prints are earthbound beasts. Okay, I don't believe they are. But yet that's where his head is, because he is that scientific mind. You know, it's got to fit into the evolutionary paradigm, or, you know, and his thing also, this is where I argued with him. He didn't accept anything that I had found because there were no footprints associated. And I said, dude, you got your blinders on. Your criteria are so strict that you're losing the big picture. You know, if everything is based on footprints, there's a lot of stuff that happens out there and they don't leave footprints. I mean, you yourself could walk through various type of terrain and not leave footprints in some of it, you know, and the only thing that could track you was an Indian tracker. Okay. I had 2 Native American sharpshooters accompany me on a Squatch quest that I did in Colorado. And those guys could track virtually anything. They could track a snake across a rock. Okay. And that's why I plan, if I get into certain situations, I will always have a Native American sharpshooter with me, because
Smart.
they're in tune with things. Okay, they're in tune with things, and I like people who are in tune with things. Okay, so anyway, sorry I talked too much.
No, it's awesome.
So P-Dog was asking the question, and I think you may have already answered this with your story, but he was asking if you think that the lights in the woods are connected to Sasquatch.
I have never seen them in connection to Sasquatch, but that's the thing. That is, I have had research friends who said, yes, they see the orbs in the woods while they're hunting Sasquatch. Now, that could be what I call hitchhiking phenomena. A lot of times you're looking for one thing and something else flares up. It's very common in the paranormal world, but it does seem that these orbs, these lights, are associated with Bigfoot type creatures. I have a couple film guys in Colorado who said they absolutely have shown this on film, that these things are themselves the orbs. When you see an orb in the woods, that is a Sasquatch in some state of transition. Again, it's side
We've heard
B.
that before. We've heard people. We have heard people say they've seen them. Them come out of those, manifest
Right.
out, and we've seen then, and we've heard people say they've seen them go down into them.
Yeah, right. The little portals, and I hate that word. I'm telling you, I don't like to talk sci-fi, but I mean, it's like you have to. We got to come up with a better word. I mean, honestly. But yes, like I say, I've never seen them, but I had one guy tell me that blue flash could have been in my back seat. There could have been an orb in my back seat that was materializing, and that's why it was so bright blue, which makes better sense than something behind the van, because there would have been too much in my van. I carry everything in my van. There wouldn't be room for that light to penetrate. It would have been a shadow. But I'm seeing bright blue on my dashboard. And this was all during the whole thing. So, and I'm starting to think he's right. It may have been behind in my back seat in that area, because it couldn't have been so bright and pretty. That was the other thing. It was pretty. It wasn't scary at all. I wasn't scared the entire time. I'm just like confused. What is that light? You know, there's nothing in my van flashing that could have made that light. Nothing. So it was either outside my van or is in my back seat. I don't know.
All right. So another question. David, have you heard them speak, and do you have any recordings of it? Also, have you recorded in the pagoda spot?
We did filming in the pagoda. If you will go look up the Bigfoot Pagoda Mystery, that's the 7-minute film that Mark Pleasant did. And you will see, I mean, he takes that camera, he flies through them, he flies over them, you see how they're made. I have never done any sound recording there. A lot of people say that's evidence that I don't even believe what I'm talking about. Now it's not. It's that there is almost a respect. I mean, it's like I've seen it. I don't have to prove it to myself. My job is not to prove anything to anyone. My job is simply to tell you what I've experienced. Inspire you, or the listeners, the viewers, inspire them to go out there and also have these adventures. Because what time is it? I mean, right now is when you need to be out there. Right after this podcast, go out into woods that you felt funny in. Sometimes you go out in the woods and you don't feel funny. Other times you go out in the woods and you're like, wow, there's no sound. Especially if there's no sound, something's going on. I was in North Carolina, Eustace Conway, the guy on Mountain Men. I was on his property, 1,000 acres, untouched, okay, except by him. So he said, yeah, come on out. I've had an experience. So we were out there, and my wife and I and his assistant were sitting out, and birds, everything was going on. All of a sudden, it just went completely silent. And I said, I think we got some visitors. And his assistant said, yeah, I think we do too. And it was completely silent for quite a while. And then gradually it just came back up. So if you ever had that experience, you need to go to that woods tonight and see what you find. The thing is, you have these shows, reality TV. Okay, I won't mention any names, but you know what I'm talking about. They make you think that every time you go out in the woods, you're going to find something. By George, they're out there for 2 days, and boy, they got all this evidence. About that ain't the way it happens. I'm going to tell you, you could research for 2 weeks or 2 months and never have anything, and then one night, pow, it happens. And it's happened for me for whatever reason. I've had a number of experiences, but that's just me, okay? And it doesn't always happen that way. And so don't get frustrated if you go out and you don't have an experience, but you've got to know what you're listening for. You've got to know what you're looking for. And then once you heard the thing, whatever it is for you, could be a double knock, or it could be a grunt, or it could be a whistle. They whistle. My dad and I used to semi-argue about this. He was not convinced. We didn't argue. He just really pressed me. Well, what about this? What about this? So I had to explain all this stuff to him. He knew that I wouldn't make fun of him. He didn't tell me about his Bigfoot experience until about 6 months before he died. That's how afraid it made him to even talk about this. And there are a lot of people like that. If you want to hear stories, you need to have the guts to talk about it in a restaurant or a coffee shop or the truck stop, whatever. You will be surprised how many people go, you know what, when I was a kid, this happened. Or my mom said this, my mom and her sister saw one of these things go up a hill. It scared them so badly. This was in the afternoon. My grandma and grandpa weren't there, so they left the 2 girls there. They said they saw this. They called it a bear, but they said it didn't look like a bear. It scared them so badly, they just went to bed and spent the rest of the afternoon in bed because they didn't know what it was. So those kind of stories are out there if you're patient enough to find them. So
P-Dog had a question about if his dad were to bring a thermal scope, do you think he'd be able to see anything if you were looking at the lights? And just to be quick about that, we have caught lights on different night vision equipments. So
No,
yes, we have.
there is heat. That's part of the thing. You know, the magnetism, the electricity, the heat,
The energy.
the energy. The heat doesn't lie. That's the thing. Yeah, I mean the heat is like I saw one. You showed a video at the Nebraska conference of the creature sitting in the woods, and it was doing something. It was like
Yeah.
doing something, like skinning something or whatever. That was the first time I was like very impressed by heat vision film video. I loved that. It was cool. I will tell people about that. You know, they talk about, well, they don't have anything on film, and I said, well, let me tell you about the she squatchers. Okay, they
Oh,
had this video, and it was so odd to see that thing doing. What do you think it was doing?
we
think
thought it
that
was.
getting an animal.
Well, that's what it looked like, you know.
But here's the thing though. We found out later that we thought it was just sitting on the flat ground. Here later we found out that there was a big drop off. What was it? A 6-foot drop off?
I don't
And
know how
so
deep it was. It was more like Matt. We were leaving the next morning, so we couldn't go back and look at the place in the light. But Matthew went back there, and he said right there where we saw it, there was like a little drop off, and he felt it was standing there using this area as a cupboard, a kitchen countertop, working on it. So that's why we were only seeing that upper part of it.
Wow, that is cool. That is cool. Do you tell that at your lectures?
We do.
Well, there you go. I think that's very
We have
cool.
a lot more stuff now too, because it's been quite a few years since then, and we've had a lot of really cool things happen. And one of the things that happened, it's coming out in one of the newest documentaries, is being released in March, is we're walking down this railroad corridor.
Oh yeah,
Tammy had gone out ahead, and she saw something face to face, and then it was gone, and then she came back to tell us, and then I went out, and Jason and Gwendolyn were behind me, and I stopped and I said, I feel like something's right here to my left in the woods. And I just stood there for a little bit, and then I was like, okay. Well, then I just kept walking, and so we kept walking, and people who stayed back by the vehicle had a thermal camera and watched this very large creature come out of the woods where I had stopped and said, I feel like there's something in the woods right there. And it came out of the woods and followed us down the tracks.
wow. Yeah, that railroad tracks and power line corridors. I've never, but I mean, I've had people tell me that you can have a lot of experiences there. And they ask me why. And the power line corridors almost, I mean, I can see them feeding on that. There's a connection there. But also in those wide open spaces, there are plants that don't grow in the woods on either side, you know, and the same way with railroad tracks. It's a cleaned off area. There are certain plants that grow along the edge, but also just think about it. Railroad tracks are some of the most hidden roads in America. You can go forever on a railroad track and nobody will ever see you. I always said if I wanted to escape the law, I'd be going down railroad tracks, you know, honestly.
Least resistance. Right.
But there was a guy in Alabama that I used to do a radio show in Evergreen, Alabama. And Evergreen is known as the Bigfoot capital of Alabama. And so people would tell me stories. And he broke into a guy's house. Now, this is how real this was to him. He talked about this. He broke into a guy's house, a guy's garage. And there was a railroad track right behind the garage. So he jumped on the railroad track to get back to his area. He sat down for a while to kind of go through some of the stuff he had stolen out of this guy's garage. And he said this thing, big hairy thing, came out of the woods, got up on the railroad tracks, dragging a deer, and it looked both ways. He said it didn't seem like it saw him, but it traveled down the railroad track after it came up on with that deer. And I really think there's a lot of activity on railroad tracks. I do. And somewhere else, I think about this. You're on the interstate. You got traffic going this way. Then you have a big, huge wooded median. And then you've got the traffic on the other side going that way. That's a whole area where nobody ever goes, that median. between the two interstates. There could be all kinds of activity out through there, and no one would ever know it. And I've often thought about, I just need to start walking these. There's probably structures out there, because it really does seem like they love to watch people be people. They will stand at the edge of a fence and watch women hang clothes. They will stand at a playground and watch kids play. They're fascinated by people, especially female people. Okay. And I think part of that is the high pitched range of the laughter and the talking. I think they like higher ranges. I mean, think about it. When they whistle, they always go low, high, low, high. And my creature that yelled and screamed, they go low, high. They like that high range, you know. I've got a friend who does opera. She sang for me last night, and amazing. So I'm going to take her out in the woods, and I'm going to let her sing and see what comes out. You know, I think vocal ranges attract these things, especially female vocal ranges.
All right.
Music.
We're going to have to say goodnight, because
Are we done?
We have to be done, because
Oh,
Tammy's
crap.
dead. I know, I can see it in her face. It's so late there. And
Well,
thank you for
can
coming.
we have a part 2? We can have
Yeah.
part dose.
I haven't told you about the Yucatan. There's so much I haven't told you.
Well, then you have to come back.
I want to. It was
All
very
right.
easy. It was
All
very
right.
easy to get here. So
All right.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
thanks for having me. Thank you for
Glad you
having
came
me.
on
I've
so
enjoyed
far.
it.
And
Yeah.
thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Oh.